I'd like to just move to update on Ames Nowell master plan first, because I know the chairman of that needs to pick up his son at 7 o'clock. So, Rick Collins.
Do a presentation. Be so kind for a moment.
The white switch? That should shut those lights. No, the white. Keep going. There you go. Yeah, maybe not. What do you, is that a Mac?
Nope, it's a Chromebook.
It's not, and it's not.
The function and then the F8 key. I'll see, Chromebooks don't have those sort of fancy things like the functions and the F8 key. Doesn't have the function. I won't hold this up anymore. That did it.
All right, just close the notebook and we should be good.
Then I can't advance it. Yes, it is. Anyway, yeah, that's weird.
Keep doing that.
So the Ames Nowell Master Plan Committee was put together by the Board of Selectmen back, I believe, in 2018, in response to the fact that there really wasn't any sort of discussion, control over what's happening at the park. Everybody knows Ames Nowell. It's a great park. It's 600 acres. Some of it is just, untouched woodlands that, we're talking old growth because it hasn't been cut in, 150 years. I mean, it's just, there's quarries out there. There's all sorts of amazing features to this park. But as we know, it's become quite run down and neglected over the years. So the idea of the Master Plan Committee was to have some people come together and figure out what the park needs immediately, in a couple of years, and 5 to 10 years down the road, because nobody in the state was going to be doing that for us, and then bringing the plan and seeing what we can do with it. So the committee is myself, Paul Bucher, who's now with Conservation, Chris Schultz, and Paul Usberg. We've made up the most of it. We had a lot of meetings prior to the pandemic, kind of went into dormancy during the height of the pandemic. We've been meeting on and off for the past few months. This is really one of the last big things we want to do before we finalize it. Just some quick background about the park is that the pond wasn't always there. Beaver Brook, which runs through the middle of the pond, has always been there, but the pond wasn't. The pond really wasn't there as we know it until about 100 years ago, when one of the owners put a dam kind of near where the existing one is, and that really allowed it to fill up. Previously, there were other little smaller dams because the site's always been part of the town's industry. You had one of the town's first mills located on Beaver Brook, just off Chestnut Street. But the Cleveland Pond really wasn't created until about the 1900s. And what we know as Ames Nowell State Park really came together in about the 1940s, when Ames Nowell, who was Oliver Ames's grandson, Ames of the town of Easton, part of Borderland, that family basically bought up all the land and started pulling together all the individual pieces around the park into one big holding. Interestingly, the one property he couldn't buy, and this is all well documented at the town library, is the Porecki land. He just said they refused to sell. The old man was stubborn and they refused to sell. So this is still a problem apparently. It was turned into a state park in the 1960s. Initially, if you talk to people, the Boy Scouts would go and camp there. You had lots of boating, canoes, swimming, which you don't see anymore. They had guided tours going around the park. And also, interestingly, like since the earliest days, there's been problems with people gathering in parking lots and having parties and public safety issues and fights. And so some of that hasn't changed either. But really what happened is about 2004, when we had that state economic problem, Ames Nowell was actually slated to close. Like they were going to shut it, like can't go into it because of budget reasons. It was saved at the time, but basically it was made a satellite of Wampatuck. So the full-time Pete Rangers who were at Ames Nowell were sent to Wampatuck and essentially sent back over to Ames Nowell kind of on the busier seasons. It's an afterthought, essentially, and that's one of the problems. So, the folks who work there are great people and they care about the park very much, but there's no individual Ames Nowell line item in the DCR budget anywhere. So, here's just some of the unfortunate headlines we've been seeing over the years, which is recognizing that just in the early zeros, just the funding was devastated, and people very quickly noticed that trash isn't being picked up, the bathrooms closed and then burned down and never were replaced. At one point in the summer, they had something like 24 part-time employees during the summer to help do guided tours and camps, and it's just all gone. Kathy Teen was really helpful about 05, 06 to get some money into it, but since then there really hasn't been much specific investment done for the park. So over the past couple of years, while through this committee, we've had a lot of conversations with people, and the great thing is how many people are interested in helping this effort out. People really like Ames Nowell. This isn't something where we have to twist people, say, no, really, go check it out. You want to see what this place is like. It's like, no, they know it, they've been there, they love it, they want to help. And that's fantastic to have in this sort of effort. One of the best parts about this is establishing a partnership with the New England Mountain Bikers Association. They have a specific Southeastern Mass chapter, and these guys are just amazing. These are the guys who go into the park on their bikes and they cut all the trees that have fallen down. They keep an eye out for four-wheelers and ATVs, which have been a growing problem again. They report issues because with their bikes, they're just all over the park at all times. They're building bridges and mapping out trails, and they're just incredible stewards in this whole effort. And they've been so helpful in helping us do this. They helped identify an issue we have going on there today about some potentially illegal activity. So they've been amazing. We've had a couple volunteer cleanups. If you've been up there lately, you know the dam shoreline looks a lot better. Thanks to Allison Sullivan, we were able to get the grill stands that were just literally rotted poles sticking out of the ground at shin height, taken out and replaced. So now at least they're waist high before you walk into them. And we've also been able to go and document the beaver flooding at the north end of the pond, which is a real actual thing. You go out there are beavers, you will see them, you will see their dams, you will see the chewed down stumps. So that is an environmental issue that isn't just cute, it's something that has to be kind of dealt with in some way.
You're flooding downtown, you want to do it.
So our key goals were simple. It was to improve public safety, focus on visitor services, embrace active opportunities. Just to specify about this, there are some parks that are more passive recreation. It's walking, sitting, drawing. I mean, you just kind of chill out. And then there are other parks where people like to do it. They like to go running, they like to go biking, they like to fish, they like to canoe. Those are more the active recreational opportunities. Ames Nowell is definitely an active recreation park. We want to, of course, protect the environmental benefits. This is one of the core habitat areas in the region. And figure out what the short and the long-term needs are. So here's kind of the key public safety needs. One is to keep the dam shoreline cleared. And what happens is that when it doesn't get cleared on a regular basis, the weeds grow up shoulder high, head high. And it means that if you're standing on the shore, you can't see what's happening around that curve towards the other side of the pond. And that's a public safety issue. Just by keeping it clear, as a ranger told us, he can stand kind of in that main entrance area and see the far side of the pond, which is a very popular walking area. So that's, for instance, a public safety need is to keep it clear. We need an improved trail marking system, including park boundaries. If you pull up a map, it'll have the intersections are kind of mapped out. Those are the W01, W02 that you might see. But other than that, you have no idea where you are. There's no trail names, there's no trail maps. And this is why we keep having people getting lost in the park, because it is big, and it all looks alike, and all the trails wind around, and it's a major public safety issue. And so we're hopefully going to work with the fire department, see if we can identify where those areas people tend to get lost the most, and see if we can at least start to put together some directional signs at some spots to say, hey, if you mean to go back to Cleveland Pond, it's this way. If you need to go back to the power lines, it's this way, and at least start to give them some sort of directional ability. There's also a need to specify where some of the park boundaries are. With some of the residential areas growing, they're now impeding on what have been marked trails, essentially, from the state park. And so we have some residents complaining about hikers just all of a sudden appearing in their backyards, because there's no signs that say, now leaving state park, now entering private backyard. So that's something that needs to be clarified. There's also no signage about the fact that ATVs are banned out there, and that there's no hunting. And if you go out there in some of the spots, you will see hunting blinds set up in a tree, because there's a lot of animals out there. And we've heard a lot of reports about increases in ATV traffic. Apparently one of the popular spots a little bit further south got closed, and they've been migrating up this way. And the power lines make it a real appealing area to just plop it down and go for miles, and you can't, it's illegal. And if anybody sees it, they'll call environmental police, and those four wheels will get picked up right away. But we need to put the signs up just to let people know that, hey, this is not an allowed activity. And of course, more regular ranger presence. People go up there and they know there's not a ranger up there, and that's not a safe thing to do. So we want to make sure we're advocating to have more regular rangers, especially during the busy months. What's a park if you don't like going to the park? So one of the things is, the bathrooms burned down 10 years ago and they were never replaced. When you have a park that attracts thousands and thousands and thousands of people every month, it's probably helpful to have someplace a little bit more permanent than a porta potty. So, this is part of what the needs are. Trail maintenance largely hasn't been done through most of the park. The mountain bikers are great about keeping things clear, but there's a lot of trails that just aren't, they're overgrown. You can't walk through them without turning sideways. Or the areas where you used to have little wooden bridges across the muddy spots, well, the muddy spots have migrated now, and now they don't match. So all those ongoing maintenance issues just haven't been done. We do need to complete the Porecki land acquisition. I was going to ask Scott if there's an update about where that stands.
Yeah, it's going through the land court
Still
process
okay.
now, and
Okay.
moving at the rate that moves.
And so part of that is once that's complete, we can hopefully build a trail that goes around the pond, because right now, people kind of take that walk and expect it to keep going, and it doesn't. And they're either now have to backtrack, 2 miles, or bushwhack through some land that technically isn't public. So it leaves people a little bit confused as to what to do. Environmental. There's certainly some needs to make sure that the water coming into the pond is clean. Since the town has become sewered, that isn't as much of an issue, but there still is contributing factors. It's like we're seeing with Island Grove. There's a lot of weeds in the water. Is it because of what's coming into the pond? Is it just naturally occurring? Is it because we've had so much of a drought the past few years? If you talk to people that grew up in the area, they'll tell you about swimming and jumping into it and that it wasn't, 5 feet of muck. And now it's, a lot of places where you go, it's only about 4 or 5 feet deep because it's been grown up so much. So we do want to figure out, is there something contributing to the water quality that we can address? And then pursue the maintenance plan. We need to figure out if there's something we should be doing with the beavers up north because left to their own devices, they'll change the landscape and not necessarily in a positive way. And so we need to figure out, is there something that can or should be done on how we handle that? And then one of the things we talked about is acquiring the land to the north of Chestnut Street that contributes to it. And this has certainly come up over the years. But Ames Nowell is just a piece in a large necklace of environmental habitat that starts up in Weymouth and travels down through Braintree and Holbrook and Abington and Whitman and Brockton and contributes all the way further south. It's a really big chain of land. And so the more that we can do to make sure that we're protecting what's north of this, whether that's part of working with their other towns of Holbrook and Braintree and Weymouth and creating a larger forest or woods area is something to look at long term. Some shorter term goals is definitely to start doing a better job marking the trails and the sub-trails. Again, just so people know where they are. We originally were going to think about doing this on the east side of the pond first, but then what we realized is people on the east side of the pond know where they are. It's the west side of the pond that really people get lost and get turned around. So one of I think our goals for the summer is to try to figure out, at least to start putting some basic signs up. The other short-term goal, and this is really the big thing to do after this, is to create a Friends of Ames Nowell group. There's a Friends of Wampatuck, there's a Friends of Borderland, and boy, do they advocate on behalf of those parks. I can tell you, as someone who was a Senate staffer whose district included Wampatuck, heard from them constantly about advocating on behalf of the park. What they needed, what the state was doing right, what the state was doing wrong. And they were a great voice for that group. And of course, that park's a lot bigger too. But, without anyone advocating regularly for Ames Nowell, nothing will get done. And it's very much a squeaky wheel situation when it comes to DCR and the state parks. So we'll be forming a Friends of Ames Nowell group and making that a self-sustaining thing and handing it off to that group to really start pushing this forward and to take over long-term stewardship. Longer-term goals includes making sure that that pathway around Cleveland Pond gets finished, because that really turns into an asset instead of making it a big U, effectively, that it is today. There's also, it would be interesting to have a marker system because the property has such an interesting history. Anyone who's read any of Richard Beale's commentary about it knows there are some really fascinating stories about this property going back 100, 125 years. And there's still a lot of this out there. There's still a lot of foundations for homes and huts still out there. There's still some quarries out there. There's the remnants of mills out there. There's the Revolutionary grave that's out there. So that can be turned into part of the park itself. Long term, I think there's a need to study whether or not the main entrance should be off Linwood or Chestnut Street. Linwood's a very narrow residential street. They've taken a lot of traffic for a lot of years. Once you acquire all the land around the park, does it make sense to have the main entrance off Chestnut Street instead? It's something I think it needs to be considered. There really isn't a lot of infrastructure off Linwood Street now, so you're not talking about having to give up millions of dollars worth of property. But even the parking lot, as set up now, goes 2/3 of the way out to Chestnut Street. So, I mean, just coming in off there is not like a huge thing. Again, that's a longer term goal, not something that'll happen this year, next year, the year after that. We're almost done. Nope, is that it? There's one more. Let me skip this one. This is the final one. To embrace some of the recreational opportunities, we want to, of course, work with our friends in the mountain bike group to make sure that they have some creating bike trails. They put a couple of new ones out in the northeast corner. Apparently, Ames Nowell is legendary in this community about the quality of mountain bike riding because it's so tough. You have so many ridges. The guys love Ames Nowell. So why not lean into it? You can have mountain bike races. You can have all these other things. And it's great to have these people out there because they can see so much of the park so fast, and it's like having a second pair of eyes. There's an opportunity to see if this is a good spot to have a cross-country trail. And I think it was told a bunch of years ago that they used to have races up there.
Rick, back when I was in high school, that's where our cross-country races were. It was typically around the main entrance. We didn't really go into the park that much.
So it would be, I think, a great opportunity to look at, can you go up that main carriage trail on the east side of the pond and go back down and around, and then it becomes, does it become a place where you can hold regional meets and larger meets, and now it's something else that Ames Nowell and Abington is known for. There's already a lot of interest about canoes and kayaks and using it for a launch, but it's hard when the gate is closed, when there's not a ranger there. And so we want to figure out how we can make that an easier thing to do. As well as, is this a place where we can have regular bike and running races? Just so, again, more people, more stature, brings up the reputation of the park even more. So those are our general recommendations. Next steps is to create the Friends group, to, of course, bring this to the state and present it to DCR with help from our legislative team, and to really start pushing these tasks, these ideas, as we kind of move forward. But of course, before we do that, we just want to get input from the board, if they have anything, any thoughts. So to dump it all on you guys, what do you think?
Well, will the state allow us to go in there and do clearing and put up signs and do things like that?
They are actually very happy to have outside groups help.
Okay.
As long as they know what you're doing, they tend to be very open to that. I mean,
Do you have a contact that you've been dealing with
Yes.
for that? Okay.
yeah.
Rick, I know the bathroom's burned down, so it's just a cement block that's there. The building the parking lot, the circle there further back, because that's where we used to run. There's another building back there, correct? Am I correct?
Yeah, it stores some of the equipment.
Okay.
A lot of the tractors and mowers and things.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no, my understanding is there's no facilities on site anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, pursuing the parking lot on Chestnut Street's a great idea. It'd give you the opportunity to make it bigger and better lit, which could help the public safety of the lights help people find their way back.
Yeah.
So I know it's long term, but definitely something that should pursue.
Something else long-term, stocking the pond with fish.
Yeah.
I know I like this plan already, but down the road, that would be something nice to see. There's already some great fish in there, but, do a yearly trout or something, that would be interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They used to have fishing derbies down there all the time when I was growing up.
Biggest thing is
the weeds were
the
never an
weed.
issue there.
Yeah, taking care of the weeds. That's
Probably within the last 20 years, the weeds really, you can't, right now you can't fish it after June, because it's just, the weeds are just too much.
You're starting to see algae blooms. So that's part of the reason all right, is it the water that's coming into the pond, or is there something else that's happening that makes this happen? Oh, they are? Oh, good. Excellent. It's nice to have the conservation chairman on the
Yeah. I knew that was coming up. I just wasn't sure.
So,
Okay, anyone have anything else? Anyone in the audience?
So anybody who has any suggestions between now and when we this is going to be an ongoing thing, feel free to email us at friendsofamesnowell@gmail.com, and we'll have another meeting coming up in the next few weeks to kind of finalize this and close it out. But again, thank you to the board for allowing us to put this together and to work through this.
Great job, thank you.
And I hope this really puts the park on a good footing for the next few years coming forward. So thank you for doing this.